The sound came first, not the alarms. Those had been screaming for 3 minutes straight, a mechanical shriek that made teeth ache and hands shake. Not the ventilator's desperate hiss as it forced air into lungs too small to remember how to breathe. Not even the thunder of 85 of the world's most expensive physicians shouting orders that contradicted each other mid-syllable. No, the sound that mattered was silence. The moment between the pup's last heartbeat and the next one that refused to come. Eli heard it from the corner by the sink where no one remembered he existed. He heard it the way you hear glass crack before it shatters. The way you hear someone stop breathing in the bed next to yours when the clinic has no more medicine and the night stretches too long. He knew that sound. He'd heard his baby brother make it once. Only once. The private pediatric wing of Obsidian Crown Medical Tower had glass walls thick enough to stop bullets and floors so polished you could see your reflection drowning in imported Italian marble. The steel fixtures gleamed under surgical lights bright enough to burn shadows into permanent ghosts. Everything was white. Everything was cold. Everything was designed to prove that money could buy miracles. Except the pup in the center bed was dying anyway. Gray had already claimed his lips. Blue was spreading across his cheeks like frost crawling over a window. The monitors attached to his chest screamed numbers that made the doctors' faces go pale beneath their masks. For lines snaked into tiny arms that had never learned to fight. Wires disappeared under blankets that cost more than Eli's entire life. And none of it mattered. Epinephrine isn't stabilizing him. Increase the dosage. We increased it. His system's rejecting. Check the oxygen saturation again. It's dropping. 47%. The voices collided like cars on a highway with no brakes. Alphas in white coats barked orders with the kind of authority that usually bent the world into submission. Omega specialists stood frozen with surgical gloves halfway to their faces, eyes wide behind protective masks. A beta cardiologist from London screamed something about arrhythmia while a neurosurgeon from Geneva argued about brain activity. Security personnel in black tactical gear lined the walls like statues, hands on weapons they'd never been trained to use against death itself. Eli pressed himself tighter against the sink. The water was still running. No one had told him to turn it off. He'd been washing his hands because the head nurse had screamed at him 20 minutes ago for touching a doorknob with unregistered Omega filth. And he'd learned a long time ago that staying busy meant staying invisible. Invisible was safe. Invisible meant no one hit you, but invisible also meant no one saw you watching. And Eli was watching everything. The pup convulsed. A scream tore through the room. Not from the child, but from one of the doctors. The heart monitor flatlined. The sound was a single endless note that turned the air solid. Get the defibrillator. He's too small. I don't care. Get it now. Hands moved. Bodies collided. Someone knocked over a tray of instruments that clattered across the floor like silver rain. A junior doctor tripped over her own feet and went down hard, blood streaming from her nose. No one helped her up. They were all staring at the bed, at the tiny body that had gone completely still, at the Alpha King standing against the far wall with his hands pressed flat against the glass like he was trying to hold the building together through sheer force of will. Darius Blackmore, the cold king of the Eastern Syndicates, a man who'd ended wars by walking into rooms and existing, whose scent, steel and winter and something that made your hindbrain remember what it felt like to be prey, crushed the air until even the most dominant alphas lowered their eyes and bent their necks. He wore a black suit that hadn't wrinkled despite the chaos. His dark hair was pulled back tight. His face was carved from marble and patience and the kind of control that came from deciding who lived and died with nothing more than a glance. But his hands were shaking. Eli could see it from across the room. The tremor in those pale fingers pressed against glass. The way his jaw locked so tight the muscle jumped. The way he didn't blink, didn't breathe, didn't move except for that fine, continuous vibration that said everything his face refused to show. His son was dying. And the cold Alpha King, the man who controlled half the world's criminal syndicates, who negotiated treaties with presidents and executed traitors with signatures, couldn't do anything but watch. The defibrillator arrived. Paddles charged. Clear. The pup's body jerked. The monitor stayed flat. Again. Another jolt. Nothing. Someone whispered, "Oh God." Another voice cracked, "Why isn't this working?" Eli's fingers tightened on the edge of the sink. The water kept running. Cool against his brown skin. Clean in a way nothing else in his life had ever been clean. He stared at it. At the way it swirled down the drain. At the faint chemical smell rising from the basin. At the plastic bottle sitting on the counter. Clear. Unlabeled. Half empty. His stomach dropped. "Move. Let me try manual compressions. You'll crack his ribs." He doesn't have a heartbeat to protect. The doctors swarmed the bed. Eli couldn't see the pup anymore. Just white coats and desperate hands, and the kind of panic that came from realizing degrees and decades of training meant nothing when biology decided to stop cooperating. The Alpha King moved. One step forward. The entire room locked. Every voice died. Every hand froze. Every pair of eyes snapped to the man who just decided he was done waiting. Darius's scent hit the room like a fist. Cold. Lethal. Suffocating. It wasn't a command. It was an execution held in check by nothing more than the thinnest thread of civilization. His voice came out quiet. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that made Eli's pulse stutter and his knees go weak even though the words weren't aimed at him. "Save my son," the Alpha King said. Not a request. Not a plea. A fact that would reshape reality or end everyone in the room trying. The lead surgeon's voice shook. "Your Majesty, we're doing everything." "Then do more." 2 words. The surgeon's face went white. Someone started crying. The pup didn't move. And Eli, invisible, terrified, packless Eli who'd learned to swallow his voice and keep his head down and never, ever interrupt an alpha, felt something crack open in his chest. He looked at the bottle by the sink, at the pup turning blue, at the Alpha King whose hands were shaking, at the 85 doctors who'd built careers on being the best in the world and were failing anyway. His grandmother's voice whispered in his memory, "Sometimes knowing the wrong thing is what kills you. Sometimes not knowing is what kills everyone else." Eli's throat closed. His heart hammered. The monitor flatlined again. And in that moment, in that terrible, endless moment between one heartbeat and the absence of another, Eli made a choice that would change everything. He opened his mouth. Eli wasn't supposed to be here. He wasn't supposed to be in the private wing where alphas paid millions for medical miracles. Wasn't supposed to be standing on floors that cost more than his guardian's entire year of salary. Wasn't supposed to exist in spaces where power lived and breathed and reminded people like him exactly where they belonged. Which was nowhere. Omega. Poor. Black. Unregistered. For strikes that usually meant locked doors and security escorts and the kind of invisible walls that didn't need signs because everyone just knew. But Eli had gotten lucky, if you could call it that. His guardian? Old Marcus, the night janitor who'd found Eli sleeping in a hospital storage closet 3 years ago and decided not to report him, had collapsed during his shift 6 hours ago. Massive stroke. The kind that turned the left side of your face into melted wax and made words come out sideways and wrong. They'd rushed Marcus to emergency surgery, and no one knew what to do with the skinny 13-year-old Omega boy he'd been dragging around on his cleaning routes. Security had shoved Eli into a waiting room in the private wing with strict instructions. "Sit. Don't move. Don't touch anything. Don't speak. We'll deal with you after the medical emergency." Eli had nodded. He was good at nodding, good at shrinking, good at making himself so small and quiet and forgettable that people's eyes just slid right past him like he was part of the furniture. It was a survival skill. He'd learned it at 6 when his mother disappeared and social services put him in a group home where the older kids stole food and the house parents looked the other way. Learned it again at 8 when the group home closed and he ended up on the streets where being seen meant being hurt. Learned it at 10 when a shelter took him in and then kicked him out 3 weeks later for behavioral issues, which meant he tried to stop an alpha volunteer from hitting a younger kid. Omegas didn't stop alphas. That wasn't how the world worked. So Eli learned to keep his head down, learned to swallow his voice, Learned that speaking up got you backhanded across the face or shoved into walls or locked in rooms until you remembered your place. And his place was invisible. Except tonight. Tonight, the waiting room had been too close to the alarms. Too close to the screaming. Too close to the sound of a pup crying. Just once, soft and small and wrong, before the crying stopped completely. Eli had moved without thinking. Slipped out of the waiting room. Followed the sound of chaos down a hallway lined with glass and steel. Found himself outside the pediatric wing where security was too busy coordinating medical personnel to notice one more body in oversized hospital scrubs. He'd slipped inside, pressed himself against the wall by the sink, and watched 85 of the world's best doctors fail. Now, standing in the corner with water running over his hands because he'd been too scared to turn it off. Eli understood something the doctors didn't. This wasn't a medical mystery. This was a mistake. The kind of mistake his grandmother had warned him about before she died. The kind that happened when people got careless. When they assumed expensive equipment and advanced degrees meant they couldn't overlook something simple. Something obvious. Something right in front of them. Eli stared at the plastic bottle on the counter. It sat between a box of latex gloves and a container of cotton swabs. Clear liquid inside. No label. No warning stickers. Nothing to indicate what it was or why it was there. But Eli knew. He could smell it. Faint. Chemical. Wrong. The same smell that had filled the sink at the free clinic when his grandmother washed his baby brother after he'd gotten into something toxic in the alley behind their apartment. She'd stripped him down. Rinsed him under cool water. Scrubbed every inch of skin while muttering prayers in a language Eli didn't understand. It's not always the inside that kills you, she'd said. Sometimes poison lives on the skin, absorbs through, burns from the outside in. And babies absorb everything faster. Their skin's thinner, more delicate. What wouldn't hurt you or me could kill them in minutes. His brother had survived. Barely, because his grandmother had known. Had recognized the smell, had understood what the clinic doctors missed, had acted fast enough to stop the damage before it spread too far. Eli looked at the pup, at the blue lips, at the way his tiny chest barely moved, at the blotchy patches on his skin that didn't look like illness. They looked like burns, chemical burns, from the outside in. Someone had washed the pup in the sink. Someone had used whatever was in that bottle. Someone had made a mistake, and now the Alpha King's only heir was dying because no one thought to check the water. Eli's pulse roared in his ears. His hands shook so hard water splashed onto his borrowed slippers. He knew what he had to say. Knew what would happen if he said it. Omegas didn't interrupt alphas. Didn't question doctors. Didn't speak in rooms where power lived unless they wanted to be removed. And removal didn't mean escorted out. It meant hurt. Humiliated, made an example of so everyone else remembered the rules. Eli had been removed before, knew what it felt like to have security guards' hands on his arms, knew the sound his body made hitting pavement, knew the taste of blood in his mouth and the way his ribs ached for weeks after and the nightmares that came when he closed his eyes. He'd learned to stay quiet, learned to keep his observations to himself. Learned that speaking up only got him punished while the people in power did whatever they wanted anyway. But the pup wasn't moving. The doctors were panicking. The Alpha King was standing against the wall with his hands shaking and his scent turning the air into broken glass and winter. And Eli, invisible, terrified Eli, knew something they didn't. Knew the truth. Knew the answer. Knew that staying quiet this time meant watching a child die when he could have stopped it. His grandmother's voice whispered again. Sometimes the hardest thing in the world is speaking when everyone wants you silent. But silence kills just as sure as poison, baby. And you got to decide which death you can live with. The pup convulsed. Once. Small. Terrible. His tiny hand spasmed against the sheets. His mouth opened in a silent cry that never found air. The monitors shrieked. Doctors shouted. Someone screamed for another round of epinephrine. And Eli knew that more medicine would only make it worse. Because the problem wasn't inside the pup's body. It was on it. His throat closed. His knees trembled. Every instinct screamed at him to stay small. Stay safe. Stay invisible. But the pup's lips were turning darker, and Eli had already watched one baby brother die. He couldn't watch another. Dr. Helena Voss had graduated top of her class at Oxford Medical School. She'd performed surgery on heads of state, saved diplomats, delivered the heirs of 3 royal families. Her hands had been steady through terrorist attacks and natural disasters and political coups that turned operating rooms into war zones. But right now, staring at the dying pup in front of her, those same hands were shaking so badly she had to press them flat against the bed rail just to keep from dropping the syringe. "This doesn't make sense," she whispered. Dr. Kaito Tanaka, neurosurgeon, specialist in pediatric brain trauma, flown in from Tokyo specifically for this case, shook his head. His face had gone gray. "The vitals indicate multisystem failure, but there's no source, no infection, no congenital defect, no trauma. Nothing in the blood work suggests." "Then find something," Dr. Voss snapped. "We're missing it. We have to be missing it." They were missing it. All of them, 85 doctors, specialists from every corner of the world. Alphas with egos the size of continents and omegas with credentials that could fill textbooks. Cardiologists and pulmonologists and toxicologists and geneticists. Equipment worth more than small countries. Diagnostics that could detect a single mutated cell in an ocean of healthy tissue. And none of it mattered, because the pup kept dying, kept slipping further away with every passing second, kept turning colors that didn't belong on living skin. "Oxygen saturation at 41%, a nurse called out. Her voice cracked. "Heart rate erratic. Blood pressure. I can see the monitors," Dr. Voss snarled. She didn't mean to snap. But panic was a living thing crawling up her spine and choking rational thought. She'd seen children die before. It was the worst part of her job. The thing that woke her at 3 a.m. and made her question everything. But she'd never seen a child die like this. For no reason. With no explanation. Despite everything medicine could offer. Dr. Mikhail Petrov, Moscow's most celebrated pediatric intensive care specialist, pushed forward. "We need to intubate. Force ventilation. Give his lungs support while we already tried that," Dr. Tanaka interrupted. "His airway rejected the tube. Twice. Then we sedate him more. Any more sedation and we'll stop his heart ourselves." Voices rose. Arguments erupted. The betas near the back started shouting about calling in a shaman. An alpha from the surgical team suggested experimental gene therapy. Someone mentioned a treatment from a research facility in Switzerland that hadn't been approved for human use yet. Desperation made people stupid, made them grasp at anything, made them forget that sometimes, most times, medicine had limits. Dr. Voss pressed her fingers against her temples. Think. What were they missing? They'd run every test, checked every system, examined every inch of the pup's tiny body for signs of disease or injury or genetic abnormality. Nothing. He should be healthy, should be thriving, should be the picture of perfect alpha genetics wrapped in expensive blankets and monitored by the best medical team money could buy. Instead, he was dying, and no one could explain why. "Dr. Voss," she turned. One of the junior doctors, an Omega girl barely out of her residency, stood with a tablet in trembling hands. I ran the blood work again, triple-checked the results. And nothing. There's nothing. No toxins, no pathogens, no irregularities. His blood is clean. Dr. Voss wanted to scream, wanted to throw the tablet across the room, wanted to grab the universe by its throat and demand answers because this wasn't fair. Medicine was supposed to work. Science was supposed to provide solutions. They'd done everything right. So why was the pup still dying? What about external factors? Someone suggested. Environmental contamination? Something in the air or... The room is sealed. Dr. Tanaka cut in. HEPA filters. Positive pressure. Nothing gets in that we don't approve. What about the equipment? Could something be malfunctioning? We've replaced everything twice. Allergic reaction? To what? He hasn't been exposed to anything unusual. The arguments continued, theories piled on top of theories. And through it all, the Alpha King stood silent, watching, waiting. His scent had gone so cold the air tasted like winter, like standing on a frozen lake and feeling the ice crack beneath your feet. Like knowing you were about to fall and there was nothing to grab onto. Dr. Voss had treated powerful people before, but she'd never felt power like this. Never felt the weight of a gaze that promised consequences beyond imagination if she failed. And she was failing. They all were. "Try the epinephrine again," she ordered. Her voice sounded hollow. "Different dosage. Maybe. We've tried 4 different dosages. Then try a 5th. She was grasping. Knew it. Didn't care. Because doing something, even something pointless, was better than standing there watching a child die while his father memorized which doctors to execute after this was over. The pup convulsed again. Harder this time. His back arched. His tiny fists clenched. A sound escaped his throat. Raw and broken and barely human. Then he went still. Completely still. The monitors screamed. "He's crashing. Get the defibrillator. We already used it. Then use it again." Hands moved. Bodies collided. Dr. Voss grabbed the paddles herself, charged them, pressed them against the pup's chest, and prayed to whatever deity might be listening. Clear. The pup's body jerked. The monitor stayed flat. Again. Another jolt. Nothing. Again. Nothing. 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 Dr. Voss's vision blurred. Someone was crying. Maybe her. Maybe everyone. She raised the paddles for a 4th attempt. Knowing it was useless, knowing they'd crossed into the territory where they were just torturing a corpse, knowing that the Alpha King was going to kill them all and maybe they deserved it. Stop. One word. Quiet. Absolute. Dr. Voss froze. Everyone froze. The Alpha King had finally moved. He crossed the room in 3 strides, stopped at the foot of the bed, looked down at his son with eyes that held nothing. No emotion, no hope, no rage, just nothing. The kind of nothing that came after you'd run out of things to feel. "Stop," he repeated. Dr. Voss's hands shook. "Your Majesty, we can still." "You can't." His gaze lifted, pinned her. "None of you can. You've made that clear." The room held its breath, waited for the execution order, waited for the security team to start dragging doctors away, waited for the cold Alpha King to do what he did best, eliminate everyone responsible for his displeasure. But Darius Blackmore didn't give orders. He just stood there, looking at his dying son. And for the first time in her career, Dr. Helena Voss understood what it meant to be truly powerless. She'd built her reputation on saving lives, on being the best, on bending biology to her will through skill and knowledge and sheer determination. But none of it mattered, because medicine had limits. And sometimes, it's not his heart. The voice came from the corner, small, shaking, wrong. Everyone turned and saw, for the first time, the skinny black Omega boy standing by the sink with water still running over his trembling hands. Dr. Voss blinked. "Who? How? When did? What did you say?" someone demanded. The boy flinched. His eyes went wide. His mouth opened and closed like he was trying to swallow the words back. But he'd already spoken, and now everyone was staring, including the Alpha King. The first time Eli saw someone die from a mistake, he was 7 years old. A girl in the group home, Cassie, 9, with braids his grandmother used to fix when the house parents weren't looking, had gotten sick. Fever, cough, nothing serious. The kind of thing that went away with rest and soup and maybe some cheap medicine from the corner store. Except the house parents didn't want to pay for medicine, didn't want to deal with a sick kid, didn't want to hear Cassie crying through the night. So they'd grabbed a bottle from the cleaning supplies, something clear, something that looked like medicine if you didn't read the label. Something they'd mixed with water and forced down Cassie's throat while she gagged and thrashed and begged them to stop. "It's just like cough syrup," they'd said. "Stop being dramatic." Cassie died 6 hours later. Lungs burned from the inside, throat swollen shut. body convulsing so hard she broke her own wrist thrashing against the mattress. The house parents called it an allergic reaction, blamed Cassie's weak Omega constitution, buried her in the free cemetery where they put people nobody wanted to remember. And Eli, 7 years old and already learning that the world didn't care about mistakes when they killed the powerless, had stood at the edge of her grave and made a promise. "I'll pay attention," he'd whispered. "I'll remember. I'll notice the things other people don't." Because if someone had noticed, if someone had looked at that bottle, if someone had cared enough to check, Cassie would still be alive. Now, standing in the pediatric wing of the most expensive hospital in the world, watching the most educated doctors in existence argue over a dying pup, Eli understood something terrible. Money didn't make you careful. Power didn't make you smart. And sometimes the people who knew the most were the ones who overlooked the obvious, because they didn't expect simple mistakes, didn't think about them, didn't believe the answer could be something as mundane as contaminated water or mislabeled chemicals or someone washing a baby in the wrong solution. Eli stared at the bottle on the counter. Clear plastic, no label, half full of liquid that caught the light wrong. Too thick, too viscous, like it had weight medicine didn't have. He'd noticed it 10 minutes ago, right after a nurse had grabbed it, used it, set it back down without looking, right before the pup started turning blue. Eli had watched her wash the pup's skin with a cloth soaked in whatever was inside that bottle, watched her scrub behind his ears and under his tiny arms and along his legs where for bruises marked delicate skin, watched her rinse the cloth in the sink and wring it out and repeat the process 3 times. "Keeping him clean," she'd muttered. "Poor baby's been through so much." Then she'd dried him off, covered him with new blankets, gone back to monitoring equipment, and 30 seconds later, the pup's oxygen levels dropped. No one connected them. Why would they? They were looking for disease, for genetic disorders, for complex medical explanations that justified their expertise and training. They weren't looking at the sink, weren't smelling the faint chemical burn in the air, weren't noticing the way the pup's skin looked wrong. Not sick wrong, but irritated wrong. Blotchy, inflamed, like something on the surface was reacting, absorbing, killing. Eli's grandmother had taught him about absorption, about how skin wasn't a barrier, it was a membrane, porous, permeable, especially in babies, especially in areas where the skin was thin. Wrists, neck, behind the ears, along the inner thighs. Anything you put on a baby's skin goes inside them, his grandmother had said. That's why you got to be so careful. Why you check everything twice. Why you never, ever use something you're not absolutely sure about. But the nurse hadn't checked, had just grabbed the nearest bottle, had assumed it was safe because why wouldn't it be? This was a private medical facility. Everything here was controlled, vetted, approved, except someone had put the wrong bottle in the wrong place. Or someone had poured the wrong liquid into an unlabeled container. Or someone had gotten careless, made a mistake, the kind that killed people, the kind that was killing the Alpha King's son right now. Eli's pulse hammered against his ribs. His hands were still under the running water, cold now, so cold his fingers had gone numb. He couldn't move them, couldn't turn off the faucet, couldn't do anything but stand there and know the truth, know the answer, know that saying it out loud would destroy him, because Omegas didn't correct nurses, didn't question medical professionals, didn't stand in front of 85 doctors and an Alpha King and suggest that maybe, just maybe, they'd all missed something obvious that got you hurt, got you removed, got you made into an example so everyone else remembered their place. Eli had learned that lesson. Learned it with bruises and broken ribs and nights spent locked in rooms until he apologized for daring to speak. He knew better, but the pup convulsed again. Small, weak, barely there. His tiny chest hitched. His mouth opened in a silent gasp. His fingers twitched against the sheets like he was reaching for something he'd never find. And Eli saw Cassie, saw her thrashing in the group home bed. Saw her eyes rolling back, saw her hand reaching toward him. 7-year-old him who didn't know how to help, who didn't understand what was happening, who stood frozen while the adults made mistake after mistake after mistake, and he couldn't watch it happen again. Couldn't stay silent while a child died from something so stupid, so preventable, so fixable if someone just looked. Eli's mouth opened. His voice came out wrong. Too quiet. Barely a whisper. It's not his heart. No one heard him. The doctors kept arguing. The Alpha King stood motionless. The monitors screamed. Eli tried again. Louder. His throat felt like broken glass. It's not inside him. A beta nurse near the supply cart turned. Frowned. What? Everyone stopped. Conversations died mid-word. 85 pairs of eyes swiveled toward the corner. Toward the skinny black Omega boy in borrowed scrubs who shouldn't exist. Who shouldn't be there. Who definitely shouldn't be speaking. Eli's knees locked. His vision tunneled. Every instinct screamed at him to run. To apologize. To disappear before they made him regret existing. But the pup was still dying. And he was the only one who knew why. So Eli raised one shaking hand. Pointed at the sink. At the unlabeled bottle. And said the words that would either save a life or end his own. Someone washed him with poison. The silence after Eli spoke was the kind that preceded violence. He knew that silence. Had felt it before. Right before fists connected with faces. Right before bodies hit walls. Right before the world reminded you exactly what happened when you forgot your place. Eli's heart stopped, then started again. Too fast. Too hard. Slamming against his ribs like something trying to escape. He couldn't breathe. Couldn't move. Could only stand there with his hands still pointing at the sink, at the bottle, at the evidence everyone else had ignored. And wait for the consequences. They came fast. Who the fuck? How did an Omega get in here? Security. Get him out. 3 guards moved simultaneously. Black tactical gear. Weapons on their hips. Hands reaching for Eli before their brains finished processing the order. Eli's body locked. He wanted to run. Wanted to drop to his knees and apologize. Wanted to take back the words and disappear and pretend he'd never existed in this room where power lived and breathed and crushed anyone foolish enough to challenge it. But his feet stayed planted, because the pup was still dying, and running meant letting it happen. The first guard grabbed Eli's arm. Fingers dug into thin muscle hard enough to bruise. Move. Now. Wait, Eli gasped. Omegas don't speak here. The guard yanked. Eli stumbled forward. His borrowed slippers caught on the floor. He went down hard, knees cracking against marble. Pain exploded up his legs. Someone laughed. Someone else muttered, "Packless trash." Eli's vision blurred, but he twisted anyway, looked back at the sink, at the bottle still sitting there, at the evidence they were going to ignore because removing him was easier than listening. "Please," his voice cracked. "Please just look. Shut up." The guard hauled him upright, started dragging him toward the door. Eli's feet scraped against the floor. His pulse roared in his ears. This was it. This was the moment he'd be thrown out, beaten, made into an example, and the pup would die. Would die because Eli wasn't enough, wasn't important enough, wasn't alpha enough to make them listen. "Stop." One word. Quiet. Absolute. The guard froze. Everyone froze. Because the voice hadn't come from a doctor or nurse or anyone with authority over hospital security. It had come from the Alpha King. Darius Blackmore moved for the first time since his son started dying. Turned from the bed. Faced the room. And the weight of his presence hit like a physical force. His scent. Steel and winter and something ancient that made Eli's hindbrain scream, "Submit, submit, submit," crushed the air. Made it hard to breathe. Made Eli's knees want to buckle even though he was already halfway to the floor. This was an alpha who'd built an empire on dominance. Who negotiated with warlords and presidents. Who ended arguments by existing in a space until everyone else remembered they were prey. And right now, that alpha was looking at Eli. Not at the doctors. Not at security. At the skinny 13-year-old Omega boy being dragged across the floor like garbage. Eli's throat closed. He couldn't look away, couldn't breathe, could only stare into eyes so cold they didn't look human anymore. "Release him," the Alpha King said. The guard's hand spasmed. "Your Majesty, this Omega. I didn't ask for an explanation. I gave you an order." The hand released. Eli collapsed, caught himself on trembling arms. His shoulders screamed. His knees throbbed. But he stayed frozen because moving felt like signing his own death warrant. Darius took one step forward. The room held its breath. "What did you say?" the Alpha King asked. Not to the doctors, not to his guards, to Eli. Eli's mouth opened. Nothing came out. His voice had disappeared somewhere between terror and self-preservation. He tried again, failed. His hands shook so hard he had to press them flat against the floor just to stop the trembling. A whisper, broken, useless, louder. Eli flinched, but something in the Alpha King's voice wasn't angry. It was something else. Something that sounded like a man who'd run out of options and was willing to listen to anyone, even a packless Omega boy, if it meant saving his son. Eli sucked in air, forced words past the fear. "Someone washed him," he said, stronger this time, with something wrong. "That bottle," he pointed at the sink. "It's not medicine. It's not safe. It's burning him from the outside." Silence. Then, "That's insane," one of the doctors snapped. Dr. Voss. Her face had gone red. "We're dealing with multi-system organ failure, not a rash." "It's not a rash." Eli's voice cracked. He didn't mean to yell, didn't mean to interrupt an alpha, but the words exploded out before he could stop them. "His skin's absorbing it. Babies absorb everything faster. Their skin's thinner, more permeable. My grandmother," he choked, tried again. "My grandmother showed me. When my baby brother got into cleaning solution, she had to flush him with clean water, no chemicals, no soaps, nothing that could make it worse, because everything you put on their skin goes inside them." He was babbling now, knew it, couldn't stop. "Check the bottle," Eli begged. "Please, just smell it. It's wrong. It smells wrong." And the pup, after the nurse washed him, he got worse. 30 seconds later, because whatever that is, it's poisoning him. "This is ridiculous," Dr. Tanaka interrupted. "We've run every toxicology screen. His blood is clean." "Because it's not in his blood yet." Eli's hands fisted against the floor. "It's still on his skin, still absorbing. But if you don't stop it now..." "Enough." Dr. Voss's voice cut like a scalpel. She turned to the Alpha King. "Your Majesty, I understand your desperation, but listening to an uneducated Omega with no medical training..." "Is my son dying?" Darius interrupted. Dr. Voss blinked. Yes, but have you saved him?" Her face went white. "We're trying everything." "That's not what I asked." The Alpha King's voice dropped, went cold, lethal. "I asked, have you saved him?" No one answered, because the answer was obvious. Darius looked at Eli, at the skinny boy kneeling on the floor with bruised knees and shaking hands and eyes that held something the doctors didn't. Certainty. "What do I need to do?" the Alpha King asked. The room exploded. "Your Majesty, you cannot be serious. This is insane. We'll be liable if..." "I don't care about liability." Darius's voice didn't rise, didn't need to. The cold rage beneath it shut down every argument. "My son is dying. 85 of you, the best in the world, have failed to save him. So unless one of you has a better idea in the next 10 seconds, I'm listening to the Omega." Silence. No one had a better idea, because they'd tried everything, and it had all failed. Darius turned back to Eli. "Tell me." Eli's vision swam. This wasn't real. Couldn't be real. Alpha Kings didn't listen to packless Omegas. Didn't kneel down. Wait. Eli's breath caught. The Alpha King was kneeling, one knee on the floor, bringing himself to Eli's level. The entire room went rigid with shock. An Alpha King didn't kneel. Not for anyone. Not ever. But Darius Blackmore knelt in front of a 13-year-old Omega boy and asked, "How do I save my son?" Eli's throat burned. His hands shook, but he looked up, directly into the cold, desperate eyes of the most powerful alpha in the world, and said, "Let me wash him." The growl that came from Darius Blackmore wasn't human. It was something older, primal, the kind of sound that bypassed conscious thought and went straight to the part of the brain that remembered what it meant to be hunted. Every alpha in the room, dominant specialists who'd spent careers commanding operating rooms and intimidating colleagues, went absolutely still, necks bared, eyes dropped. Submission so automatic it happened before conscious thought caught up. The guards holding Eli released him like he'd suddenly caught fire. Eli hit the floor. Again, his palms stung, his chest heaved, but he didn't have time to process what had just happened because the Alpha King was already moving. "Clear the bed," Darius commanded. His voice came out steady now, controlled, but underneath it ran something lethal. A promise that anyone who argued would not survive the conversation. No one argued. Doctors scrambled backward. Nurses disconnected monitors with shaking hands. For lines came free, wires detached. The pup lay exposed on white sheets stained with sweat and fear and the residue of 85 failed attempts to save him. He looked smaller without all the equipment. Fragile, dying. His skin had gone past blue into something gray and mottled. His tiny chest barely moved. His lips were parted around shallow breaths that sounded wet and wrong. Blotchy patches covered his arms, his neck, behind his ears. Everywhere the nurse had washed him. Chemical burns. Eli knew what they looked like now. Had seen them on his baby brother. Had nightmares about them for years. And now he was staring at them on the Alpha King's son while 85 doctors watched him with expressions that ranged from horror to skepticism to barely concealed hope that he'd fail, so they wouldn't be the only ones responsible for this disaster. Eli pushed himself to his feet. His legs shook. His hands wouldn't stop trembling. But he moved anyway, crossed the space between the door and the bed like he was walking through water. Heavy, slow, every step an act of will. "What do you need?" Darius asked. Eli's throat closed. What did he need? He needed his grandmother. Needed someone who actually knew what they were doing. Needed to be anywhere but here, standing in front of a dying child while the most powerful alpha in the world waited for him to perform a miracle. But his grandmother was dead, and there was no one else. Just him. Just Eli. Just a 13-year-old Omega boy who'd learned how to save one baby brother and was about to find out if that knowledge translated to saving another. "Water," Eli whispered, then stronger. "Clean water. Not from the sink, from a sealed source. And something soft. Clean cloths. Not the ones they've been using. New ones. And I need," he swallowed hard, "I need everyone to stop touching him." Silence. Then Dr. Voss. "That's it? That's your medical intervention? Water." Eli flinched, but he looked at her, at this alpha woman with decades of training and letters after her name who'd never had to learn medicine in the back of free clinics where mistakes killed people, and said, "Yes, this is insane." "Then leave," Darius interrupted. His gaze stayed locked on Eli. "Anyone who thinks they have a better idea can leave now. Anyone who stays is here to help, not critique." No one moved. No one wanted to be the doctor who walked out while the Alpha King's heir died. But no one helped either, except one nurse, young, Omega. Her hands shook as she grabbed sealed bottles of sterile water from a supply cabinet, brought them to Eli along with a stack of unopened gauze packages. "Thank you," Eli whispered. She nodded, didn't speak, but her eyes held something that looked like understanding. Like she knew what it meant to be the lowest person in the room and still have to act. Eli turned to the bed, to the pup, to the tiny, dying child who didn't know that his entire future depended on whether a packless Omega boy remembered his grandmother's lessons correctly. "I need to move him," Eli said. "To the sink." "Absolutely not," Dr. Tanaka started. "He needs to be flushed," Eli continued, voice shaking but steady. "Under running water. Cool, not cold. Gentle pressure." I have to rinse everything off his skin. All of it. Whatever they washed him with, whatever's still absorbing, it all has to come off. Moving him could kill him, Dr. Voss said flatly. Not moving him will kill him, Eli shot back. He didn't know where the courage came from. Didn't know how he was standing here arguing with alphas who could destroy him with a word. But the pup's chest hitched, made a sound like drowning, and Eli stopped caring about consequences. Please, he said. Not to the doctors, to Darius. Let me try. The Alpha King looked at his son, at the child he'd probably imagined growing up strong and dominant and unstoppable, at the tiny body that was failing despite every advantage money and power could provide. Then he moved, bent down, and lifted his son with terrifying gentleness, cradling the pup against his chest like the child was made of glass and wishes and every desperate prayer Darius had never spoken aloud. Show me, the Alpha King said. Eli's vision blurred. He blinked hard, moved to the sink, the same sink where he'd been standing when this started, where the unlabeled bottle still sat like evidence of humanity's capacity for careless destruction. He turned on the water, tested the temperature with shaking fingers. Cool, not cold. Cold would shock the system, make things worse. Cool was safe. Cool was what his grandmother had used. Here, Eli said. His voice came out steadier than he felt. Hold him under the stream. Support his head. I'll do the rest. Darius moved forward. The pup whimpered. It was the first sound he'd made in minutes. Small, broken, but alive. Still alive. Eli's hands moved before his brain caught up. He cupped water in his palms. Let it run over the pup's skin. Gentle, careful, washing away the residue that clung to blotchy patches. Behind the ears first, where skin was thinnest. Then neck, arms, legs. Every inch that looked inflamed or wrong or like something external was burning through. The water ran clear at first, then faintly cloudy, then clear again. What's happening? Someone whispered. Eli didn't answer, couldn't, was too focused on the pup's face, on the way color was starting to shift. Gray fading, blue retreating, pink creeping back like dawn across a horizon. Oh my God! A nurse breathed. The pup's chest expanded, deeper this time, fuller. His tiny hand twitched. Fingers uncurled, reached for nothing, then closed around Eli's thumb. The grip was weak, barely there, but real. Eli's throat closed. His vision swam. He kept washing, kept rinsing, kept whispering words he didn't remember choosing. You're okay. You're okay. I've got you. You're safe now. You're. The pup inhaled. A real breath, long and shuddering and full. His eyes cracked open, unfocused, confused, but open. And looking up at Eli with the kind of trust that made Eli's heart stop and restart and break all at once. Behind them, chaos erupted. His oxygen saturation, it's rising. Heart rate stabilizing. How is this possible? Someone check that bottle now. But Eli barely heard them, was too focused on the pup, on the way pink was spreading across his skin, on the way his breathing evened out, on the way his tiny fingers squeezed Eli's thumb like he'd found something worth holding on to. Is he? Oh. Darius's voice came out rough, broken, like something inside him had cracked and couldn't quite seal back together. He's breathing, Eli whispered. I think he's going to be okay. The Alpha King made a sound. Not a growl, not a word, just a sound raw and desperate and grateful in ways that didn't have language. His arms tightened around his son, careful, protective, like he'd never let go again. And Eli stood there, dripping wet, trembling, barely able to process what had just happened, while 85 doctors stared in stunned silence. He'd done it. He'd actually done it. Saved the Alpha King's heir with nothing but water and knowledge learned in the back of free clinics. Proved that sometimes the answer wasn't complex, wasn't expensive, was just someone paying attention when everyone else was too busy being important to notice the obvious. Eli's knees buckled. He caught himself on the edge of the sink. Breathe, breathe, and tried not to think about what happened next. No one moved for exactly 7 seconds. Eli counted them. 1, 2, 3. The pup breathing. 4, 5. Pink spreading across skin that had been gray. 6, 7. The Alpha King's hands shaking as he held his son. Then reality crashed back in. Get a stretcher. We need fresh monitors. Someone call the lab. I want that bottle analyzed immediately. Bodies moved. Voices overlapped. The machinery of medicine resumed like a paused film suddenly playing at double speed. But something had changed. The panic was gone, replaced by something else. Purpose. Because now they knew what they were treating. Now they had direction. All because a packless Omega boy had noticed what 85 experts had missed. Eli stayed pressed against the sink. His clothes were soaked. His hands were numb. His entire body felt like it was vibrating on a frequency slightly off from reality. He'd done it. He'd actually saved the pup. Except now they're going to ask how I knew. Going to ask why I was here. Going to remember I'm not supposed to exist in spaces like this. Eli's stomach dropped. The adrenaline was wearing off. Fear was creeping back in. The same fear that had kept him silent for years. The same fear that knew exactly what happened to Omegas who made Alphas look stupid. Even accidentally, especially accidentally. Someone get him dry clothes, a nurse said. Eli blinked, looked up. The Omega nurse who'd helped him earlier was holding out a towel. Her expression was carefully neutral, but her eyes held something that looked like warning. Be careful, those eyes said. You helped, but that doesn't mean you're safe. Eli took the towel. His hands shook so hard he nearly dropped it. Across the room, the pup was being transferred to a clean bed. Doctors swarmed around him, checking vitals, running new tests, moving with the kind of controlled efficiency that came from finally knowing what they were dealing with. And in the center of it all stood Darius Blackmore, the cold Alpha King, still holding his son's tiny hand, still not looking away, still radiating that terrifying combination of relief and rage that made the air taste like ozone before a lightning strike. Results, he said quietly. A beta technician materialized with a tablet. His face was pale. Your Majesty, preliminary analysis of the bottle shows. He swallowed hard. Industrial degreaser, hospital grade, but not approved for patient contact. Someone mislabeled it, or stored it in the wrong location. Or, who? One word, glacier cold. We're investigating. I didn't ask for an investigation. I asked, who? The technician's hands shook. We don't know yet, but find out. Darius's gaze never left his son. Find out who brought that chemical into my son's room. Find out who used it. Find out everyone who touched it, approved it, or failed to notice it. And bring me their names. Not a request. A death sentence waiting for addresses. The technician fled. Silence settled again. Heavier this time, because everyone in the room understood what was about to happen. Someone had made a mistake, and the Alpha King didn't forgive mistakes. Not when they nearly killed his heir. Dr. Voss cleared her throat. Your Majesty, we should have caught this. I take full responsibility. You should have. Darius turned, looked at her, through her. But you didn't. Dr. Voss's face went white. Pack your credentials. The Alpha King continued, voice flat, empty. You're done here. Your Majesty. All of you. His gaze swept the room. 85 doctors. The best in the world. Every single one who'd stood there arguing while his son died. I want your credentials. Your licenses. Your hospital privileges. You failed to save my son. You failed to notice something obvious. You failed because you were too arrogant to consider that the answer might be simple. He let that sink in. Let them feel the weight of it. Then, the only reason you're all still breathing is because my son is alive. Thank whatever gods you pray to that an uneducated Omega boy was smarter than every single one of you combined. No one spoke. No one breathed. Dr. Tanaka opened his mouth, then closed it. Dr. Voss looked like she might be sick. The others just stood frozen in the wreckage of careers that had ended the moment they dismissed Eli's warning. Darius turned away from them, turned toward Eli, and Eli's heart stopped, because the Alpha King was walking toward him, crossing the space between the bed and the sink, coming closer with that predator's grace that made every instinct scream run. But Eli couldn't run, could barely stand, could only watch as the most powerful alpha in the world stopped directly in front of him. Knelt, again. The entire room held its breath. An Alpha King didn't kneel twice, didn't lower himself for anyone. But Darius Blackmore went down on one knee in front of a packless, soaking wet Omega boy and said, "You saved my son." Eli's throat closed. His voice cracked. You saved him when no one else could, when everyone else failed. Darius's cold eyes held something that didn't look cold anymore, looked almost human. "What's your name?" "Eli." A whisper. Some people call me Pookie. I'm not. "Eli." The Alpha King repeated it, like he was memorizing it. "Do you have a pack?" Eli shook his head. "Family? No, just my guardian. Marcus. He's in surgery. That's why I was here." "Not anymore." Eli blinked. "What? You're not here because of your guardian anymore." Darius reached out. Slowly, carefully, like approaching something wild and easily startled. His hand settled on Eli's shoulder. Heavy, warm, real. "You're here because I owe you a debt, and I always pay my debts. You don't owe me anything. I owe you everything." The Alpha King's grip tightened, not painful, protective. "My son's life, my sanity, my future, everything that matters. And that means you're under my protection now." Eli's vision blurred. "I don't understand." "You don't have to." Darius stood, pulled Eli up with him. "What you need to understand is this: you belong wherever I decide you belong. And right now, you belong with me and my son. But no," gentle but absolute. "No more arguments. No more apologizing for existing. You saved my heir. That makes you family in every way that matters." Family. The word hit Eli like a punch. He hadn't had family since his grandmother died. Hadn't had anyone who looked at him like he mattered, like he was worth protecting, like he deserved to exist in spaces that weren't corners and shadows and places where no one noticed when he disappeared. Tears burned behind his eyes. He blinked hard, refused to let them fall. "Thank you," he whispered. Darius's expression softened, just slightly, just enough to show that underneath the cold Alpha King was someone who understood what it meant to be grateful. "No," he said quietly. "Thank you." Behind them, security was sealing the pediatric wing. Investigators were photographing the unlabeled bottle. Doctors were being escorted out. And somewhere in the building, alarms were ringing. Not medical alarms, security alarms. Because the Alpha King had given orders. And those orders meant someone was about to answer for what happened. Someone was about to learn what happened when you made a mistake that nearly killed Darius Blackmore's son. Someone was about to discover that mercy wasn't something the Cold King offered. Not to traitors. Not to incompetence. Not to anyone who threatened what he loved. Eli shivered. Not from cold. From understanding. He'd saved the pup. But he'd also just witnessed the moment an empire decided to show its teeth. And he was standing at the center of it, under the protection of a man who didn't forgive, didn't forget, and never, ever let debts go unpaid. The lockdown happened in stages. First, every exit sealed. Second, all communications jammed. Third, security personnel materialized at every corridor intersection like they'd been waiting for this exact order. Eli watched it happen from inside the pediatric wing, watched the building transform from a hospital into a trap. No one was getting out, not until the Alpha King got what he wanted. Names. The forensic team worked in silence. 5 specialists in white coats with expressions that said they understood exactly how much their findings mattered. Cameras documented everything. Evidence bags sealed the contaminated bottle, the sink fixtures, the cloth the nurse had used. Every piece that would tell the story of how an industrial chemical ended up in a sterile pediatric ward. Eli sat in a chair someone had brought him. Dry clothes now, clean scrubs that actually fit, borrowed from the pediatric staff. His hands were wrapped around a cup of hot chocolate a beta nurse had pressed into his grip. He couldn't taste it, couldn't feel it. Was too busy watching the investigation unfold and trying not to think about what happened when the Alpha King found whoever was responsible. Darius stood at the observation window, watching his son sleep peacefully now, color fully returned, breathing steady and strong. The pup's tiny hand was curled around a stuffed bear someone had found. He looked peaceful, alive, but the Alpha King's expression held nothing peaceful. "Results," Darius said, not loud. Didn't need to be. The head forensic specialist, an older beta with silver hair and steady hands, approached with a tablet. His voice came out carefully neutral. "Your Majesty, the substance in the unlabeled bottle is industrial degreaser. Sodium hydroxide base, concentration high enough to cause severe chemical burns on contact. Not approved for any medical use. Should never have been anywhere near a patient. How did it get here? We're still investigating." "That's not what I asked." Darius turned, looked at the specialist with eyes that held winter. "How did it get here?" The specialist swallowed. "Someone brought it in. Someone with access to the wing. Someone who either didn't know what it was or..." He hesitated. "Or what? Or knew exactly what it was." Silence. Cold. Heavy. Suffocating. Eli's fingers tightened on the cup. The specialist continued, voice shaking now. The bottle was placed deliberately, next to medical supplies, within easy reach of nursing staff. Someone familiar with the layout would know that nurses preparing for baths often grab whatever's closest without checking labels. "Are you telling me this was intentional?" "I'm telling you it's a possibility we can't rule out." The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Darius's scent shifted, became something predatory and patient and utterly lethal. The kind of scent that made Eli's hindbrain scream warnings about apex predators and inescapable hunts. "Find them," the Alpha King said quietly. "I want surveillance footage. I want access logs. I want interviews with every single person who entered this wing in the last 48 hours. I want backgrounds checked, financials audited, enemies cataloged." He turned back to the window, to his sleeping son. "Someone tried to kill my heir," Darius continued, voice empty, hollow, either through incompetence or malice. "I don't care which. I want names, and I want them now." The forensic team scattered. Eli sat frozen. His mind was racing. Intentional. Someone had meant to put that chemical there, had wanted the pup to die. But who? Why? Who would benefit from the death of an Alpha King's heir? The answer came immediately. Everyone who wanted power without Darius to stop them. Rival syndicates, political enemies, corporate competitors, anyone who'd ever bent the knee and resented it. Anyone who saw the Cold King's bloodline as a threat to their own ambitions. The list was probably endless. Eli shivered. He'd thought saving the pup meant the danger was over. But he'd been wrong. The danger was just starting. Because now someone out there knew their plan had failed. Knew the pup survived. Knew there was a witness who'd figured out what they'd done. Eli's stomach dropped. "They know about me. Whoever did this, they know I'm the one who stopped it. They know I'm a problem." His hands shook so hard he nearly dropped the cup. A warm presence settled beside him. Eli jerked, looked up. The Omega nurse who'd helped him earlier sat down in the chair next to his. Her expression was kind but worried. "You okay?" she asked quietly. Eli shook his head. Couldn't speak. Couldn't explain the terror crawling up his spine like ice. The nurse seemed to understand anyway. "You're safe here. The Alpha King won't let anything happen to you." "But what about after?" Eli whispered. "What about when? When I have to leave?" "You're not leaving." Both of them turned. Darius had moved, was standing directly behind Eli's chair. His expression was unreadable. "I told you," the Alpha King said. You're under my protection. That means you don't leave my sight until whoever did this is found and dealt with. But no arguments. Not harsh. Just absolute. You saved my son. That makes you a target now. Anyone who wanted him dead will want you dead too. So you stay with me, with us, where I can keep you safe. Eli's throat closed. I don't want to be in danger. You're not. Darius knelt again, brought himself to eye level. You're safe, because I will burn this entire city to the ground before I let anyone hurt you. Do you understand? Eli stared at him, at the cold Alpha King who just promised to commit mass destruction for a packless Omega boy he'd met 20 minutes ago. It should have been terrifying, should have felt like a threat. But instead it felt like the first time in Eli's entire life that someone had meant it when they said they'd protect him. Okay, Eli whispered. Darius nodded, stood, turned back to the observation window just as a security officer rushed in. Your Majesty, we found something. Everyone froze. Surveillance footage from yesterday, the officer continued. Someone entered the supply closet adjacent to this wing. Civilian clothes, no hospital badge. They were inside for 47 seconds. Who? We're running facial recognition now, but the officer's face had gone pale. Preliminary identification suggests corporate security credentials from Nexus Pharmaceuticals. The silence that followed was absolute. Nexus Pharmaceuticals, one of Darius's biggest rivals, a megacorporation that controlled half the Eastern Seaboard's medical supply chain, a company that had been aggressively trying to negotiate contracts with the Blackmore Syndicate for years, a company that Darius had repeatedly refused to work with. Eli watched understanding settle across the Alpha King's face, watched cold calculation replace confusion, watched fury crystallize into something sharp and patient and inevitable. Nexus, Darius said quietly, not a question, a confirmation, a name that would be erased from existence before the week ended. The officer nodded. Should we contact them? Darius's voice came out soft. Lethal. Tell them I want a meeting. Tomorrow. Their CEO. Their board of directors. Everyone responsible for security and supply chain management. And if they refuse? The Alpha King smiled. It was the most terrifying thing Eli had ever seen. They won't refuse, Darius said, because if they do, I'll make what's about to happen to them look merciful by comparison. He turned, looked at Eli. You should rest. Tomorrow is going to be eventful. Eli didn't ask what that meant, didn't want to know. Just nodded and let the Omega nurse guide him to a private room where he could sleep under the Alpha King's protection, where he could try not to think about the Empire about to go to war, where he could pretend he hadn't just become the most important witness in a case that would reshape the criminal underworld, where he could close his eyes and remember the feel of the pup's tiny hand gripping his thumb. Alive, safe, worth it, even if it meant everything else was about to burn. Eli didn't sleep. How could he? He lay in the private room. Clean sheets, soft pillows, the kind of bed he'd only ever seen in magazines, and stared at the ceiling while his mind replayed everything. The pup dying, the doctors failing, his own voice interrupting God's, the Alpha King kneeling, and now war, actual war, because Eli had noticed a bottle, because he'd spoken up, because he'd saved a child and accidentally ignited a conflict that would probably end with bodies and fire and the kind of violence that made history books. His hands shook beneath the blankets. This is my fault. Except, no, it's not. Eli's grandmother's voice whispered in his memory. You don't apologize for doing the right thing, baby. You don't make yourself small because someone else made themselves evil. You stand up, you speak truth, and you let the consequences fall where they belong, on the people who created them. But that didn't make the fear go away, didn't stop his pulse from racing every time footsteps passed in the hallway, didn't stop him from imagining what would happen when Nexus Pharmaceuticals realized their plan had failed, realized there was a witness, realized Eli was the reason their scheme unraveled. They'll come for me, Eli thought. They have to. I'm the one who knows, the one who saw. the one who stopped them. A soft knock interrupted his spiral. Eli jerked upright. "It's just me," a familiar voice called. "The Omega nurse. Can I come in?" "Yeah," Eli whispered. The door opened. The nurse entered carrying a tray with soup and bread and water. Her expression was gentle but tired. "You need to eat," she said. "I'm not hungry." "Eat anyway." She set the tray on the bedside table, sat down in the chair next to the bed. "You've been through trauma. Your body needs fuel even if your brain doesn't want it." Eli stared at the soup. His stomach churned, but he picked up the spoon anyway, forced himself to take a bite. Tasted like nothing. The nurse watched him for a moment. Then, "My name's Kara. I should have introduced myself earlier." "Eli, I know." A small smile. "Everyone knows now. You're kind of famous." Eli's stomach dropped. "Famous? The Omega who saved the Alpha King's heir when 85 doctors couldn't?" "Yeah." "That story's spreading fast. By morning, every syndicate in the region will know your name." "That's bad," Eli whispered. "That's complicated," Kara corrected. "Some people will see you as a hero. Others will see you as a threat. And some," she hesitated, "some will see you as leverage." "Leverage? Against the Alpha King. If they can't get to his son directly, they might try to get to the person he's protecting." Eli set down the spoon. His hands were shaking again. "I don't want this," he said quietly. I wasn't trying to be important. I just wanted to help." "I know," Kara's voice gentled. "But that's how it works sometimes. You do something good, and the world turns it into something complicated. Doesn't mean you did anything wrong." "Then why does it feel like I did?" "Because you're kind. And kind people always feel responsible for things that aren't their fault." Silence settled between them, comfortable, understanding. The kind that came from two Omegas who'd learned to navigate a world built for Alphas. "What happens now?" Eli asked. Kara sighed. "Tomorrow, the Alpha King meets with Nexus. Makes them answer for what happened. Probably destroys their company in the process. After that," she shrugged. "After that depends on what he decides to do with you. With me, you're a witness, protected asset, someone who matters to him now." Kara met his eyes. "The Alpha King doesn't forget debts, Eli. He'll keep you safe. But that safety comes with expectations." "What kind of expectations?" "The kind where you're part of his world now. His circle. Under his protection means under his authority. You'll have security, resources, everything you need. But you won't have freedom. Not the way you used to." Eli's chest tightened. "So I'm what?" "A prisoner." "You're protected," Kara corrected firmly. "There's a difference. Prisoners have enemies on the outside and locks on the inside. You have someone willing to burn the world down to keep you safe. That's rare, Eli, especially for Omegas like us. I don't want anyone to burn the world down for me." "Too late." Kara's smile turned sad. "You saved his son. That changed everything. Now you're part of his pack, whether you wanted to be or not." Pack. The word hit different than family had. Pack meant belonging, meant connection, meant never being invisible again. Eli didn't know if that was a gift or a curse. A soft sound came from the doorway. Both of them turned. Darius stood there, silent, imposing, holding his son in his arms. The pup was awake now, looking around with curious eyes that hadn't quite figured out how the world worked yet. "He wanted to see you," the Alpha King said quietly. Eli blinked. "Me? You?" Darius entered the room, approached the bed. The pup made a happy sound, reached out with tiny hands toward Eli. "I think he remembers," Darius said, voice soft, almost wondering. "Remembers you saving him." Eli's throat closed. "Can I?" he swallowed. "Can I hold him?" Darius's expression did something complicated. Then he carefully, so carefully, transferred his son into Eli's arms. The pup settled immediately, made a contented sound, grabbed onto Eli's shirt with determined little fists, and Eli felt something inside him break. Not in a bad way. In the way that happens when something you didn't know was frozen suddenly thaws. He trusts you, Darius said quietly. I don't know why. Because you saved him. Because you were gentle when everyone else was frantic. Because the Alpha King hesitated. Because some bonds form in moments of crisis. And those bonds last. Eli looked up, met cold eyes that didn't look quite so cold anymore. What happens to me? He asked, voice small, scared. After tomorrow? After you deal with Nexus? What happens to me? Darius was quiet for a long moment. Then he knelt. Again. Third time. An Alpha King on his knees in front of a packless Omega boy holding his heir. You have a choice, Darius said. I won't force you, won't trap you. But here's what I'm offering. A place in my pack. Protection. Resources. Education. Everything you need to build whatever life you want. My son clearly loves you already. And he paused. I trust you, which is not something I offer lightly. And if I say no, then I set you up somewhere safe, far from here, with enough money to start over. And I make sure no one from Nexus or anywhere else ever finds you. But you'd rather I stayed. Yes, simple, honest. I'd rather you stayed. For my son. For me. Because you deserve better than running. And because Darius's expression softened just slightly. Because I think you need a family as much as we need you. Eli's vision blurred. The pup cooed, snuggled closer. Kara stood, quietly excused herself, left Eli alone with the Alpha King and the child he'd saved. I don't know how to be part of a pack, Eli whispered. Don't know how to be anything except invisible. Then we'll teach you. Darius reached out, gently brushed tears off Eli's cheek. You won't be invisible anymore, Eli. Not here. Not with us. You'll be seen, protected, valued. Why? Because you saved what matters most to me, and that makes you irreplaceable. The words settled into Eli's chest. Warm, real, true. He looked down at the pup, a tiny hand still gripping his shirt. At eyes that looked at him like he was important, like he mattered, and Eli made his choice. Okay, he whispered. I'll stay. The meeting happened at dawn. Neutral territory, a conference room in the financial district where syndicates met to negotiate truces and trade agreements and the kind of business that never made official records. Eli wasn't supposed to be there, but Darius had insisted. They need to see you, the Alpha King had said. Need to understand exactly what they tried to destroy. So Eli stood at the back of the room. Clean clothes, security flanking him, Kara beside him for support, and watched the CEO of Nexus Pharmaceuticals walk in with 12 board members and a legal team that looked ready for war. They looked confident, arrogant, like they thought this was just another negotiation. They were wrong. Darius sat at the head of the long table. His son was with trusted caregivers elsewhere. Safe, protected, healing. But the Alpha King's expression promised that everyone in this room would remember exactly why he was called the Cold King. Gentlemen, Darius said quietly, thank you for coming. The CEO, an older Alpha named Marcus Venn with silver hair and expensive suit, smiled. Your Majesty, I assume this is about the unfortunate incident with your son. We're prepared to offer compensation for any compensation. Darius repeated the word like it tasted wrong. You tried to murder my heir, and you think compensation is appropriate. The smile faltered. Your Majesty, I assure you, Nexus had nothing to do with. Your security operative placed industrial degreaser in my son's medical wing. Darius's voice stayed soft. Lethal. Footage confirms it. Credentials confirm it. The operative, who conveniently died before we could question him, left enough digital trail to connect directly back to your company. Silence. The board members shifted. The legal team exchanged looks. Marcus Venn's face had gone carefully neutral. If one of our employees acted independently, they didn't. Darius leaned forward. Your company has been trying to force contracts with my syndicate for 3 years. I've refused every time. You decided that removing my heir, destabilizing my succession, would give you leverage to renegotiate terms. That's speculation. That's fact. The Alpha King's scent filled the room. Cold. Absolute. And here's what happens next. Nexus Pharmaceuticals will be dismantled. Assets seized. Leadership prosecuted. Everyone in this room will spend the rest of their lives answering for attempted murder. Marcus Venn stood. You can't. I already have. Darius didn't raise his voice. Didn't need to. Federal warrants were issued an hour ago. Your accounts are frozen. Your facilities are being raided as we speak. And every single contract you hold with medical institutions across the eastern seaboard has been voided. The color drained from Venn's face. You're destroying my company over an accident, over an assassination attempt. Darius stood. Over the decision to target an innocent child because you were too arrogant to accept that some people can't be bought or intimidated. He gestured to the back of the room. To Eli. That boy. That poor, packless Omega boy you probably didn't even know existed. Saved my son when 85 of the world's best doctors failed. He noticed what your operative did. He acted when everyone else panicked. He's the reason my heir is alive. Venn's gaze found Eli. Calculated. Dismissive. An Omega. An Omega worth more than everyone in this room combined. Darius's voice dropped. Went cold enough to make Eli shiver from across the space. And now he's under my protection. Which means anyone who threatens him, anyone who even thinks about retribution, will discover that what's happening to your company is mercy compared to what I'll do to them. Silence. Heavy. Absolute. Then Marcus Venn made a mistake. He laughed. You're going to war over a packless Omega? Over one child? That's not strength, your majesty. That's weakness. Darius moved. One moment he was standing at the table. The next he was directly in front of Venn. Fast enough that the CEO didn't have time to react before the Alpha King's hand closed around his throat. Not squeezing, just holding, making a point. My son is alive because that Omega boy cared enough to speak when everyone else stayed silent, Darius said quietly. That's not weakness. That's the kind of strength your entire company lacks. The kind that doesn't need power to do what's right. He released Venn, stepped back. You tried to kill my heir. You failed. And now you'll spend whatever time you have left understanding exactly what happens when you threaten what I love. Darius turned, walked to where Eli stood, and in front of everyone, in front of the CEO and board members and legal team of one of the most powerful pharmaceutical companies in the world, the cold Alpha King placed his hand on Eli's shoulder. This is Eli, Darius said, the newest member of the Blackmore Pack, the Omega who saved my son. The boy who will be protected with the same ferocity I protect my heir. Spread the word. Anyone who harms him answers to me. Eli's throat closed. He looked up at the Alpha King, at the man who'd knelt 3 times, who'd offered protection when the world offered nothing, who'd seen value in a packless Omega boy when everyone else saw invisible. Thank you, Eli whispered. Darius's expression softened. Just for a moment. Just enough. No, he said quietly. Thank you. Then he turned back to Nexus. Get out, while you still can. They left, scrambling, terrified, destroyed, and Eli stood in the conference room, surrounded by security, protected by an Alpha King, holding the title of family, and understood something profound. He wasn't invisible anymore, wasn't powerless, wasn't alone. He'd spoken when silence was easier. He'd acted when fear was safer. He'd saved a life and changed his own. And now, standing in the aftermath of justice delivered and empires shaken, Eli finally understood what his grandmother had meant. Sometimes the hardest thing in the world is speaking when everyone wants you silent. But silence kills just as sure as poison, baby. And you got to decide which death you can live with. Eli had chosen, had spoken, had lived, and the world had bent around that choice. Eli sat in the Blackmore estate garden. Actual garden with flowers and fountains and the kind of space that felt impossible after years of concrete and survival, and watched the pup toddle across grass. The child was fully healed now, strong, healthy, alive. He squealed with delight when he spotted Eli, ran forward on wobbly legs, crashed into Eli's arms with the kind of trust that made Eli's heart hurt and heal simultaneously. "Pookie," the pup said, his first word. Not mama or dada. Pookie. The nickname that had been given to Eli as mockery had become the first word of an alpha heir. Eli laughed, couldn't help it, held the pup close and felt something settle inside him that had been restless his entire life. Home. This was home. Darius emerged from the house, no longer in suits, wearing comfortable clothes that made him look almost human, almost like a father instead of a king. He sat down beside Eli on the grass, watched his son play. "Nexus is officially dissolved," he said quietly. "Leadership convicted. Assets distributed to victims. It's over." "Is it?" Eli asked. "For them." Darius looked at him. "For us? This is just the beginning." "What do you mean?" "I mean you're part of this family now, part of this world. You'll be educated, trained, protected, and when my son is old enough to understand, he'll know that his life was saved by someone who refused to stay silent." Eli's throat tightened. "I don't know how to be part of this world." "Then we'll teach you. Together." Darius's hand settled on Eli's shoulder. "Familiar now, protective, chosen. You deserve better than survival, Eli. You deserve a life, and I'm going to make sure you get it." The pup crawled into Darius's lap, then reached for Eli, wanting both of them. "Family." Eli smiled. For the first time in years, the expression felt real. "Okay," he said, "teach me." And in the garden of the Blackmore estate, surrounded by safety and chosen family and a future he'd never imagined, Eli finally stopped being invisible, finally stopped being afraid, finally understood that speaking up, even when the world wanted silence, was how you changed everything. This was only the beginning, but it was his beginning, and that made all the difference. Late that night, after the pup was asleep and the estate was quiet, Darius found Eli on the balcony. "Can't sleep?" the Alpha King asked. "Too much to think about," Eli admitted. Darius stood beside him, both of them looking out at the city lights. "You changed everything," Darius said quietly. "You know that, right? Not just for my son. For me. For everyone who thought power meant never asking for help. You proved that sometimes the strongest thing you can do is notice what everyone else ignores." Eli didn't know what to say, so he just stood there and let the Alpha King's words settle into the spaces that had been empty for too long. "This was only the beginning," Darius said. "There will be others who resent you, who see you as a threat, who want what happened to stay buried. But I promise you this. As long as I'm alive, you're protected, your family, and nothing will change that." Eli believed him. "Thank you," he whispered. Darius smiled. "Rare. Real." "No, Eli. Thank you for being brave when it mattered most." And in that moment, standing on a balcony with an Alpha King who'd knelt 3 times, who'd chosen to see value in a packless Omega, who'd promised protection and meant it, Eli finally understood. He wasn't just surviving anymore. He was living, and that made everything, all the fear, all the risk, all the courage, worth it.